This is the area we want to have explored.
The task immense, but the determination greater.
We want to make sure if we find those kind of remains, if you will, that we want to make sure the proper protocols, the proper connections to the communities of the families that, we're connected here.
Chief Michael Starr of Star Blanket Cree Nation wants to search the grounds of the residential school his father was forced to attend.
As soon as he arrived, his hair was cut, and whenever he tried to speak his language, he was hurt.
Starr says he believes there could be children buried on these grounds of the former Qu'Appelle Indian Residential School, just like in Tk'emlúps, and he wants Ottawa to pay to find out.
It should be solely their responsibility because of the devastation brought.
In the name of the Father.
In 2019, the federal government set aside more than $30 million to respond to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. Recommendations specifically related to missing children and burial grounds.
We will be there for all communities.
2 years later, the ministers say communities can start applying for money now.
We are walking at the pace of communities.
A former Truth and Reconciliation Commissioner says the government needs to be moving faster.
We heard an old man, for example, tell us that he used to see children burying children.
Wilton Littlechild supports a demand from the UN Human Rights Office, calling for investigations into the deaths of Indigenous children and the missing. He used to always have an empty chair beside him during hearings to represent those who never came home, and he worries the recommendations will go unfinished.
And there's no body in Canada that monitors what Canada is doing to follow up on those recommendations, so consequently, nothing gets done.
So, Olivia, given all of that, what is the government saying about that UN call for an investigation?
Adrienne, the government is not committing to a probe into the deaths and the disappearance of Indigenous children from residential schools. Instead, the ministers say it's up to Indigenous communities to decide what's best for themselves. The government says it's spent the last year consulting with Indigenous communities, but Chief Michael Starr, who we just heard from, says he wasn't aware of any engagement process. Still, he plans to apply for this newly available funding to search for burial grounds in the hope his community can find closure. Adrienne?
Indeed. Olivia Stefanovich. Thank you, Olivia.